Hi, today what we want to talk about is RRGs, relative rotation graphs. Now these are an amazing graph, particularly if you are working in a way where you need to compare a lot of different securities. Maybe you're looking at portfolio allocation and you're trying to decide what should I add to my portfolio. Now RRGs are just a great way of being able to put all of those securities on one chart. Now the story behind RRG is Julius de Compagnie, a sell-side analyst out of the Netherlands, used to go and visit his buy-side clients, and they'd be asking him, what should I add to my portfolio, IBM or Google? And, while you can do your technical analysis and you can say, yes, this is a buy and yes, this is in an uptrend, well, which one's better? If I've only got limited resources, well, which one should I be going with? And that's what RRG tries to do. It's a way of normalizing the relative performance of a group of securities against a benchmark. Now, depending on who's watching this video, maybe you're already working as a professional, maybe you're not. But for those that aren't, one of the things that's really important to know is that many professionals are being judged against the performance of a benchmark. So if they're a large cap portfolio manager, well, they're being judged against the S&P 500. If they're a mid cap, or maybe the S&P 400, etc. So it's really important that their portfolio outperform that benchmark. Now, one of the ways of doing that is to make sure that we stack our portfolio full of securities which are outperforming the benchmark. And so the way that we can do that, again, is with the RRG. So it may not be relevant to everybody, but RRGs also can be used in different asset classes. We can even look at bonds versus commodities versus equities. We can look at different countries' performance and say, okay, well, how are these different regions? We can even do foreign exchange, and we can look at different currencies in relation to each other. And we'll do a quick example of that one as well. So what I'll do is jump in. If you want to know more about RRG, we do have webinars available where we go into a lot more detail explaining it. But for now, I just want to show you in this quick video just how you can add a RRG and get some interesting answers out of that. So what we're going to do is come up to the new button, multi-code chart, and we're going to do a relative rotation graph. And then from here, what I'm going to do this time is go straight to our symbol lists, because we've already done a lot of the hard work in compiling together these securities that make up these GICS level 1 and things like that. So we could do the S&P 500, and that would be a chart of all the 500 equities, which can be quite a messy chart. What I prefer to do is to start at the sector level. So what I'm looking for is my S&P 500 sector indices. And so we can do that off the ETFs. Let's do this one here. We've got a couple of different ways. There's the ETFs there. We've got another group of the spider ETFs. And then we've got this one here, which is based off index data. So let's just open that up, and we can see here our RRG with the sectors on it. Now, those names aren't very obvious, and maybe you do know all the GICS codes there, but let's go and change our labels here to the name so we can see the different sectors there. And what I like to do is change often the color of the labels to match the color of the arrows. Makes it easier to see which is which. Now, the basics of this chart of what we're looking at, anything that is in the leading quadrant is outperforming the benchmark, and it's continuing, it's even accelerating way. The way that I like to explain it is, imagine a car and a truck driving down the freeway together, and the car is the security and the truck is the index or the benchmark. Well, in this case, in the leading quadrant, the car is out in front of the truck and it is pulling away. It's getting further and further in front. So it's outperforming that benchmark or the truck. When we get down to the weakening quadrant, what we've got a situation there is the car's still out in front, but it's slowing down and the truck's starting to catch up to it. So we're in a position where, yes, it's still an outperformer, but it's not looking as good. It's trending back and looks like it's going to start lagging soon. And then we come across to the lagging quadrant, and what we've got is a situation where now the car has fallen behind and it's getting further and further and further behind the truck. It's that sort of idea. And of course, you can understand improving is now that, yes, the car is behind the truck, or the security is behind the benchmark, but it's starting to show those early signs of growth. And there is a great potential that if it follows on, it will then start to outperform in the long run as well. And what's interesting, when Julius de Campanella put this together, he was just trying to plot them. And then what he started to notice is that when you go through history, there is this rotation that happens. And it can be, very interesting. So you make these tails very long, and we start to see this rotation where these sectors and stocks and securities tend to rotate around the benchmark. And now the way we can show it very easily in Optima is just to go back through history and then just slowly slide through. And you can start to see that clockwise rotation. It's not there all the time. It's no guarantees on it, but there is this really high probability that each of these securities circle from improving to leading to weakening and then out to lagging. And they just do that over and over and again. And so there's different benchmarks. So just having a look at a couple of parts of this, obviously we've got our time frame. We can do weekly or daily. We are again linked. You can see the link there. We're linked to the S&P 500 sectors. We've got our date, which is the date that we're up to. So we can see, right now, as of the 12th of May, we are at information tech, communication services, they're all doing well. Materials was, and now looks like it's weakening. Consumer discretionary is weakening. Healthcare, etc. It's interesting because right now we've got a real separation where we've got some sectors which are doing really well, other sectors which aren't. Now, again, we're in this couple of months since most of the world's gone into lockdown, so that's kind of understandable. Industries, people are concerned about that. Finance, are people able to pay their mortgages? Consumer staples, real estate, there's concern about all of those areas. Information technology is doing well because we're all relying on information technology right now to keep going in business. So it makes sense that that's doing well as well. Now, if we come back to December last year, we can see that it's a very different picture. IT still doing well, but we've got our consumer discretionary moving from improving into leading, etc. So we've got these charts and we can do that. We can do this on a sector level. One way from a top-down analysis is to say, well, let's look at this and say, okay, information technology is doing well. Maybe what we want to do is get in there and have a look at information technology stocks and see which stocks are doing well. And there's sort of things that you can do as well. Another way that we can use the RRGs is looking at our own portfolio. So rather than using it as a stock selection, trying to find securities that we want to add, it may be a way that we manage our portfolio instead. And so what we can do there is, let's just open up a RRG. And again, if you've got your securities, your portfolio, and you've added that into a CSV or an Excel, you can import that as a symbol list here as well. So you can do a new CSV or even just a manual list, and you can create them and then use them like we use any other symbol list. But what we want to do this time is say, right, let's just go, and I'm just going to grab a bunch of securities. I don't know really what they are. Let's just grab a group of US equities. This is probably a terrible group to add. I'm just going to click and drag and drop them in this list. Now, when we have a multi-code or multi-security chart, you'll see this box down the side. Now, whatever securities we add, I could go through and just add individuals and they would get added to this list. But whatever you add needs to be in that list first. And then when we hit open, all of those securities are going to be used in the chart. So we have the chart here of our relative rotation. So pretend this is my portfolio and I want to make sure that I'm doing well against the benchmark. Well, immediately I can look at that and say, well, you know what? This one, ACA, probably isn't so good. It's underperforming. Maybe I need to pull that out of my portfolio. And I can work on it that way. So you can see that there's these multiple ways that you can use RRGs as well. Now, another type of RRG is the foreign exchange or the FX relative rotation graph. Now, this one's an interesting one because, again, we have a RRG, but our benchmark this time is the US dollar. So, for instance, we have Japanese yen, US dollar, euro, US dollar, Australian dollar, US dollar. And what we've done is we've put these all together so we can look at each of those. Now, by default, Optima is going to load all of these securities. Let me just click here. I'm just going to click down the bottom with the shift key and then hit the space bar just to make it a lot less and remove those ones from our list here. So now I can look at this and I can say, right, how are these different currencies performing relative to the US dollar? Because sometimes, the Aussie dollar may be weakening, but is that because of US dollar strength or Aussie dollar weakness? It can be either or. And by looking at this chart, I can usually get an idea of looking at it and saying, okay, well, everything is weakening. So the US dollar is obviously the big player here, the one that's very dominant and very strong. What I often do when I'm doing this type of work is I will clone these charts. So let me go and clone chart here, and we'll go and move that up into this space. And let me just move this one to there. And I will change this to the different currencies. So for instance, I will put in AUD here, Australian dollar. And now I get an interesting idea. So like I was saying before, with the Australian dollar weakening over here, that's not because of US dollar strength, but that's because of Australian dollar weakness, because all of these other majors are moving together up into outperforming against the Australian dollar. So we can start telling this story by putting these together. And often I'll put a euro and a British pound, and you start getting a really good idea of how these different currencies are interplaying. So again, very important one that's available. Now, RRG, the chart comes standard in all editions of Optima, but whether you can script, whether you can see all of the features of it will depend on which edition you have. But again, it is available as an add-on if you want to add on the things that you may be missing. So do talk to our support team at help.optima.com if you've got any questions about that, or you'd like to make sure that you're trialing the full features of this during your trial. Another way of using RRGs, which is really powerful, last time we talked about our watch lists. So we're going to add a watch list again, and let's just link that. I just want to do the NASDAQ 100 again. So let's just open that up, and we've got that coming in. I may want to know with each of these securities which quadrant they're in for the RRG. Well, I can do that quite simply with scripting. So I can come here and say new script column, and we can say, right, let's get the JDKRS, Julius de Camponer, relative strength, JDKRS, and I want from that the quadrant. And let's go here, and I want to make sure that we've got our benchmark set. Optima will do when we say that we want the benchmark to be on the index, it will do a really good job at finding the right index based on the country of the equity. But still, sometimes it may get it wrong, so I like to make sure that I'm being very explicit with these things. So we'll add in the SPX from the world indices, and we can hit apply to that. And now I'm seeing all of those securities by that. And like we did last time, I should give this a label. Let me do RRG quadrant, and let's go and group And so now we can group that, and we've got the different sections there. So it's very easy, like we did before. I can come along and say, right, let me look at all these lagging securities, and we can open them as an RRG. And as you would expect, they're all in the lagging quadrant because that's what we're doing. So these may be the ones, depending on whether I'm looking for that mean reverting trade. Again, this is a way that I could do it. Maybe I'm more trend following, then I'd be looking into the leading quadrant saying, nah, I'm just working on leading quadrant only and working with those. Scratching the surface, again, with RRGs, there is a lot that you can do with them. But again, we have resources available. We have webinars that we've done on RRG. We have research papers on some of the quantitative analysis we've done on RRGs, which you can look at as well and find out more information. So thank you for watching this one, and we'll continue on next time.